Well, welcome back into the mid-Norfolk garden. It's middle of June now, and we're going to give you a tour of this mixed planting, which is just at its very best at this time of year. It's been predominantly planted with roses, delphiniums, catmints and peonies. And doesn't it look spectacular? It's been a difficult season, particularly for the peonies and the large bloomed roses. If it's not thrashing down with tropical rainstorm type episodes, then it's threatening to do so, and a lot of them have had an awful lot of water dropped on them. Got a lot of brown buds that should be coming on and giving us a succession of flowering, which aren't going to do anything. But that's just the year, and I think everybody's experiencing the same. But what the water has done is meant that the degree of growth that we've got here is absolutely lush and spectacular. So let's go and have a look at this garden. We'll walk you through some of the plantings and roses that we've got flowering here so beautifully this afternoon. This first little border's edged in the catmint, Six Hills Giant, which flowers for probably 4 or 5 months of the year here for us. The bees absolutely love it. This year it's a little late starting, but now in full flower, and the bees are really just enjoying the pollen and nectar that they get from this plant. We cut back later in July and should give us a second flush, but at the moment it's flowering to a height of around 2.5 to 3 feet, and a profusion of flowers is just spectacular. And behind that we've got a mixed planting in this border: white delphiniums, self-seeded foxgloves in a variety of tones and colours, but predominantly the natural pinks and purples, and some real mixed blooms on those this year, with some almost a variation in the flower from one tip to the other, with whites and pinks on the same plant. A little bit of valerian you'll see just scattered in here. A lot of this planting is self-seeded to supplement the roses. Mixed planting in here of pale coloured roses, whites, reds, little bits of pink in here, but predominantly on a single palette with whites and pinks. This one's particularly a little gem of a beauty, little clusters of fine, almost apple blossom type flowers. Doesn't grow particularly tall. It's not a rambler, this, it is a shrub rose. The variety is called Ballerina. It's doing very well for us here. A little bit of black spot on it this year. Just look at the profusion of buds still to come on. That's going to be a good repeat flower and give us good value for money. Only its second year in this position, and in front of it a little herbaceous geranium just picking up that pink flower again, slightly mauve tinge, giving us that transition into the catmint at the front, running right the way down this long border and picking up the palette really beautifully for us. In the distance, cascading over the old shed, is a rather spectacular rose. Let's go and have a look at that one for a second. This is Kifsgate improved, and this is an ideal growing situation for it. Rambling up through an old plum tree, probably to around 15 or 20 feet, with these long arches. Just look at the growth that comes out of a well-established Kifsgate. They come up straight up in the air for about 7 or 8 feet and then just arch down, and if you can give it the space just to do that naturally, this isn't pruned at all. It just falls forward and then the following year breaks bud all the way along the stems. It's the way you get the maximum flower, and there's a very sweet but gentle scent coming off this one. It's just filling the air around here. But if you want a rose for scent, then let's go and have a look at the Paul's Himalayan musks, which are just at their peak. Well, this is one of the 2 mature Paul's Himalayan musk roses that we've got planted in the bottom area of this garden. Again, rambling through a well-established apple tree. And again, same habit really as the Kifsgate. You really want this to put the long growths up, and you can see those starting here and then just allowing it to arch back down, and it breaks over the full length of the stem with these beautiful. And the scent here is just spectacular. It's just a little bit over here, as you can see. Just look there. Starting to brown off, but still that sort of beautiful blush pink colour fading to an almost whitey cream as it matures. But this rose is all about the scent and the sheer volume of the flowers. as it cascades down in this little sheltered area of the garden. It's just heady. One of the best roses for filling a garden with scent for a relatively short period of time, but it's still well worth going. We've got another one just around the corner. She's running a little later. Let's go and have a look at that. Well, this is the second of the two Paul's Himalayan musk roses we've got. This one cascading through a rowan tree, planted around the same time. Thickness of the stems at the base is pretty astounding with this rose when you get them established. Here we go, rowan tree, and these stems, probably around 4 or 5 inches in diameter, are the Paul's Himalayan musk. Really probably would self-support itself, but you can also see how this rose will shoot almost from the base. You see those lush, very thin, new green stems coming up. And if you do need to cut one of these roses down, then it will recover and regrow. But if you have got the space just to let it ramble through some old trees, then that's the ideal way to grow it. And 10 or 15 years later, you'll be rewarded every year at this time with an absolutely fantastic crop of, again, these heady scented blooms. If you think it's a little noisy down here, we've got trees full of fledgling jackdaws actually just come out of the chimneys on the old farmhouse. We've got, I think, probably a little rookery of around a couple of hundred young birds, all just being taught how to fly and forage for themselves by the parents. Quite a noisy backdrop. Only lasts for a couple of days though before they're on their way. Let's go and see what else we can show you in this country garden at this time of year. This is one of my favourite, very informal plantings. A lot of it self-seeded in here. Hollyhocks, some oxeye daisy, and this little beauty that's going to come just as the oxeyes are finishing is golden or yellow feverfew. Quite tall this year, again with all the rain, but lovely tiny little daisy flowers on the same palette colour as the oxeyes, which have just been spectacular this year in this part of England. We were driving back from Norwich this morning along what's called the NDR, the Northern Distributor Road, and it looks as if it snowed on the banks of that road. The oxeyes are so profuse, absolutely beautiful, natural, spectacular floral display for drivers. A little distracting though for keen gardeners. We've got some, these are actually red onions. I'm just going to let them flower. They are, after all, just edible alliums. The foxgloves here, again self-seeded, towering to around 7 or 8 foot, some of those spires, and really nice that you're getting the contrast with the darker background behind that little rowan tree with the Paul's Himalayan musk just behind it. More mixed plantings in here, lots of hollyhocks to come out over the next few weeks. You can see the buds forming on the hollyhocks, no breaking or colour in them at the moment. It's all about the foxgloves, the oxeyes and the sisyrinchiums in the foreground here. Again, largely self-seeded, looking very, very well. And from a distance, if I move back, we have the full impact of that distance view with the planting. You don't even see the gravel path running down towards the rows in the distance. From this angle, it's such a full and heavy planting at this time of year. Rose in the foreground here, one of our favourites, Dunham Massey. Absolutely spectacular full form double in this powder pink. It stood up very well to the heavy rain that it's experienced this year. Absolutely gorgeous, even as it's unfolding. Buds just have this wonderful form, and then as it fills out in a powdery pink. Again with good scent on this rose, and it's a good upright shrub rose that can give you real impact. I think if I had to decide between growing this and growing full-on old-fashioned peonies, it would be a difficult decision because the rose gives you a longer flowering period. Most of our peonies here have come out, done their thing now. We've missed filming those this year because of the rain and the weather, but the roses will give you that longer burst of flower I do like this little geranium at the base here. Again, no name for this one. Been lost in the annals of time if it has got a variety name, but it's just such a lovely deep cerise. Let me get that in focus. Gorgeous large flowered variety as well. I've put my hand in there, it gives you some scale, probably about 2 inches across. Really nice little form. I'm hoping it's going to seed out because we have got in our gravel paths here quite a few little seedlings coming up. These paths, if you're a cottage gardener, are absolutely wonderful assets to have in the garden, and just to allow things to come. The tougher they are, the better they're going to grow on in your garden conditions, and we use this pathway as a seed bed, just pricking out what we do want in other places and moving it around. The big rose in the background is Ethel. Again, just look at the vigorous growth we've got on that. It does this every year, and this is a good time to give it an initial summer prune. I'm going to keep as many of those big laterals as I can and tie them in, but if you don't take them off, then they partially obstruct and cover the flowers, which are just coming into some colour on the buds. Let's go and have a closer look at those. Here we go, just opening up. It's a beautiful multi-headed rose, tiny little flowers but in great profusion, and if we come around here we've got one that's just a little bit further on. That's a good example of Ethel. It's a real thug. It's very thorny, very vigorous. We've grown it here almost as a hedging rose on a 2-post frame. It's thick enough to actually form a really good barrier, and just look at the amount of colour we're going to be getting on this, which is the western aspect of this framework. It's going to be fantastic and should flower for last couple of weeks of June into early July. Another great rose for a framework or growing as a small or low climber is American Pillar. Vigorous rose again. It will do a much bigger area in this, but at this time of year giving you that lovely, very rich with the pale white centres. Old-fashioned open rose, great for the bees. But just look at this. Rambling Rector. Let's go around the sunny side. Again, the scent as you work your way around here, it's almost finishing this. Just missed filming it at its absolute peak earlier on in June. But this one hasn't been pruned for probably 40 or 50 years, and it's just left to ramble its way around the base of this power cable pole to disguise it. Little open at the base in its aspect, but again, best way to grow this is to allow these big upright growths just to continue up, and naturally they'll arch back down if they're not getting in anybody's way, and they'll reward you with this beautiful profusion of creamy white, golden scented little rose flowers. And just let's pull this one down to give you a closer look at Rambling Rector. They're almost yellow, buttercup yellow as they open up. There we go. And then white with little black sepals in the middle. Again, beautifully open, great insect attractors, and just en masse, fantastic large specimen rose. But you do need to appreciate just how big it would naturally want to grow, and think carefully about where you're planting that one, particularly if you're having to get past it in a tight confined area. Not an ideal rose due to the vicious nature of the thorns that it puts out. This little Rosa Monday's been planted here in the middle of the old orchard, which we have to allow to run to seed now, to allow both the daffodils, crocus, narcissi and other bulbs that have given us such pleasure in this area over the summer months to go underground. But Rosa Monday is just a thing of beauty, isn't it? Absolutely gorgeous rose, tough as old boots, survived here in this long grass with all the competition of having a meadow growing around it for years, and does this every June. Good scent, good robust form, lovely pale leaf. It's not a vicious or a thug of a rose, it's just a very gentle old-fashioned beauty. I do love growing it. I don't know what Kate's been doing with this house pipe. It's been so wet here this year. The long aspects over these new borders, just spectacular. We've really enjoyed this planting. So a lot of it's natural, self-seeded, particularly these foxgloves. We do move a few of them off the paths and into this area, but just allowing nature to take a little bit of a lead in what comes up where can be an absolutely fantastic idea and reward you with surprises every year. And then with the backbone in here, we've got these giant ball alliums that have been planted for probably around 12 years. And I think that's Bowl of Beauty, that peony that's just coming up behind it. Again, it's a little shaded, this area, so they're a little later than the peonies in the full open borders that are almost finished. And then one more rose. If you're going to have just one shrub rose, then get a Comte de Chambord. Just look at that. Fantastic form, great vigour, old-fashioned quartered, beautiful fade, doesn't brown off usually. It's had so much water poured on it, and look at it, it's still looking absolutely gorgeous. One of my favourite roses, modern, not old-fashioned particularly, but just beautiful. The other roses on the house, not doing the same big flush that we've had in previous seasons. There's a honeysuckle that I think is taking over a little bit on the light. The rose just wrapping its way around the gable end here is Albertine. It's always a long, slow, get-going phase with Albertine, but when you do have them established on a frame like this, it will reward you every year with lovely, gentle flowers that continue for a long flowering period rather than a single big flush. But it's still a May, June, July rose really. And again, just self-seeded oxeyes in this gravel area give us a lovely place to come. I think I'm going to hit one of those sun lounges when I've got 5 minutes of opportunity before the next rainstorm comes in. I hope you're enjoying your garden this year. I hope our plantings have given you some inspiration for some ideas and colour combinations and some wild flower combinations in amongst the formal plantings. Makes for a really relaxing gardening experience. Thanks for watching.